Hi, I'm Dr. Stephanie Shackelford, a senior fellow at the Barna Group, a career coach, and along with Bill Denzel, the author of You on Purpose, Discover Your Calling and Create the Life That You Are Meant to Live. For the past several years, I have studied the topic of vocation, both through my doctoral studies and through my work with the Barna Group. And one thing is clear, whether it's the beginning of our career or later in life, we all want to know, am I on the right path? Am I doing the things that I was made to do? Perhaps now more than ever, as we navigate chaotic and uncertain times, we want to know that our life has purpose. However, our research for this book found that only 1 in 10 people are purpose-oriented in their work. We wrote You on Purpose to change that statistic and to guide readers through a framework to help them understand who they are and what they're uniquely positioned to do in the world. What is it that these purpose-oriented adults believe? They strongly agree that work should be selected for a higher purpose and that we are each made for a specific purpose in the world. To develop our framework for finding your calling, we surveyed thousands of adults across the country and interviewed hundreds of leaders to understand what are the common perceptions and misperceptions around vocation and work. This research revealed some common myths that many of us have about vocation that is contributing to our struggle to find meaning in our work and in our lives. Almost 4 out of 10 adults are frustrated with their work, and almost half are stressed. But purpose-oriented adults are 3 times as likely as others to be living out their calling. You on Purpose offers a 4-step process for discovering and carrying out your calling with confidence. In our time today, I'll briefly walk you through each of the 4 D's of this process, which is define, discover, decide, and do. I'll discuss one key myth for each step that is holding us back from living out our purpose, and then I'll end with some practical steps for identifying your calling. Before I outline these steps, let me explain how I define purpose. I'll use the words calling, vocation, and purpose somewhat interchangeably, but the basic definition is that your purpose is all of the special activities that God has created you to perform in the world, which will naturally result in service or benefit to others. So I'll say it again. Your calling is all of the special activities, which could be your work, your volunteer roles, how you're a neighbor, a friend, a spouse, a parent, to name a few. All of the special activities that God created you to perform in the world, which will serve or benefit others. And this last part is key. It's not a calling if it's not blessing others. Secondly, a calling implies a caller. Our Creator made us with a good plan in mind. And a calling is something given and received by God, not a self-directed creation of who I want to be. Lastly, as believers, we all start with the same calling. For Christians, our primary calling is to be the presence of Christ in the world. Our secondary calling, then, is how God is calling us to personally live this out. So first, define. The journey toward discovering your life's purpose starts with a pause. The first thing to do is to stop, take a look around, and consider deeply where you find yourself today. This starts by taking the time to define your current situation and name what your goal is through this process. How are you defining what you want your purpose to look like? Defining what we're after is a critical part of understanding our callings. Otherwise, we end up pursuing the wrong thing. So what did our research find that most of us are after? We found that 4 out of 5 people agree that the ultimate goal in life is to be happy. Practicing Christians are even more likely than the general population to strongly agree that their ultimate aim in life is happiness. We are told, and we so often believe the myth, that life is about the pursuit of happiness. Instead, the truth is the pursuit of purpose is more fulfilling than the pursuit of happiness, because happiness is fleeting. Like trying to catch a cloud, it disappears as soon as you grasp it because it's all based on circumstances. What's interesting, though, is that we found that though happiness is elusive, it often shows up when we are chasing purpose in a healthy way. Purpose-oriented adults are more than twice as likely as others to say that they're happy with their work. They are also more than twice as likely to feel fulfilled in life overall. So when you focus on pursuing purpose instead of happiness, you often get happiness and fulfillment as a byproduct. Purpose is rooted in God's intentional design when He created you. And this brings me to our next D, discover. Part of understanding our calling is to get more clarity on who we are, where God has placed us, and whom we are called to serve. When I talk about self-discovery, it's not in the way that the world often wants us to buy into it. We are told the myth, the journey of life is not about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. The truth is, you were created for a purpose by a loving Creator who has a good plan for your life. We so often desire the control of creating ourselves, forcing ourselves to act a certain way or play a certain role. We strive to craft our work and curate our personal brand. But if you're working against your God-given nature, all the creating, crafting, curating, and controlling quickly gets exhausting. It's much more freeing to see our calling as a gift to receive from our good Creator who made us. The Discover section is the heart of understanding your calling, and here you dig deep into who and where you are, seeking a deeper understanding of yourself, your people, and your place. These details are unique to each of us. They are the building block of who we are, God's way of showing us what He's calling us to do in the world. At the end, we'll get practical on how to do this, but for now, consider these questions. Do you know who you are? What you're good at? What desires has God placed in your heart? Have you examined the painful parts of your journey and asked God how He can transform them and redeem them for His good purposes? Where are you right now, and who do you surround yourself with? How can you be a blessing to your place and to your people? The next step in the process is to begin making some decisions on what course of action to pursue. The third step is decide. At this point, there may be a lot of ideas and potential futures floating around in your mind. However, we all tend to have a great fear about making the wrong choice. We believe the myth that the best way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. But we all know that in truth, life rarely follows a direct path. All we need is a general idea of where we want to head. When we see the options in front of us, we can become paralyzed, believing one wrong decision will derail us from finding our true calling. 2/3 of adults believe that there is one best fit job out there waiting for you to discover it. As we found out through our research and in talking to career counseling professionals, this is not true. Our callings can take different shapes throughout our life, and hopefully this should take some of the pressure off. If we are faithfully listening to God's voice and discerning His voice in a trusted community, then we cannot go astray. Whereas over half of adults believe that discovering your calling is a solo journey, purpose-oriented people are more likely to strongly agree that discovering your calling requires guidance from others. They also recognize that oftentimes there isn't a right or a wrong step. God gives us the choice, and He will be faithful to direct or redirect where needed. Understanding ourselves and our purpose isn't meant to stay inward. It should flow outward. The whole point of living into your purpose is to bless others. So once you decide, it's time for the fourth D, do. There is a difference between having a calling and living a calling, and that difference is action. It's not enough to feel prompted in your spirit toward a particular purpose. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Most of us have probably heard the saying, let go and let God. This is a myth that can keep us from putting our calling into action. Because the truth is that we must act in order for God to take us somewhere. Though there may not, and most likely will not, be perfect knowledge of where you're being called to go, like Abraham, the important part is to start moving and letting God continue to direct the steps. By choosing and committing to something now, you're not saying that this is the only thing you'll ever do for the rest of your life. What you are saying is that you're willing to commit to diving deeper into this field, this work, this life, to learn enough about it to determine if it's truly God's calling for you. You can't walk down two paths at the same time. To move forward, you have to choose one. But just over half of people have done something to discover their calling or purpose in life. A quarter have not taken any steps at all, and 1/5 are not really sure if they've taken action or not. In contrast, purpose-oriented people are more apt to engage in the trial and error process than the general population. They are more likely to have taken action to discover their calling. And taking action doesn't have to mean quitting your job and changing course all in one day. Taking small, low-risk actions is a great way to test out your calling. You can volunteer, take on a side project, practice a new skill by doing a small project for a friend, talk to professionals in a different field, or do skills training. But how do you know what areas to explore and begin taking small steps in? Here's where I want to get more practical. This is essentially what our whole book is about, but to summarize, we found that there are 3 main components to identifying your calling. So picture a Venn diagram with 3 overlapping circles. Your calling lies at the intersection of those circles, and they are understanding yourself, your context, and your times. So first, understanding yourself. This one we already touched on in the Discover section, but to reveal our true self and point us in the way He wants us to go, God oftentimes uses our passions, our propensities, and our pain. So what are the desires of your heart? And this is much deeper than the surface level passions and interests that we so often talk about. This gets to the heart of why you are drawn to those things. Secondly, what are you good at? What are your propensities, and how has God naturally wired you? And finally, a greater purpose can sometimes be revealed through the painful parts of our life. Not always, but oftentimes, pain provides an avenue to uncover our callings and see our desires and our gifts more clearly. Understanding ourselves is a lifetime process as we are continually growing and changing. Keeping a journal and engaging in regular self-reflection is very useful in this journey. Assessments such as True Motivate or Clifton Strengths and others can also be useful tools to help see ourselves more clearly. The second circle is your context. Understanding yourself requires recognizing your context, the people and the place that you're a part of. And this begins by recognizing the context that shaped us while we were growing up. Some of us will come from contexts that provided encouragement, support, and opportunities for our strengths and our gifts to flourish. For others of us, this was not the case. It's important to spend time understanding our contexts because they can shape how we view our work and our purpose. And once we recognize them, we can intentionally choose which influences we want to affirm and reinforce and which ones we want to leave behind. Secondly, God uses the people around us and where He has placed us to help us discern and navigate our callings. With intentionality and for His purposes, God has placed you in a specific location, situation, and time in history. What needs can you serve right where you are? What people or places are you drawn to and why? How can your unique wiring contribute to others in specific ways? And finally, the last circle is your times. We are influenced by the times we live in and called to influence them as well. If our primary calling is to be the presence of Christ in the world, then we must understand the world that we live in and how God may be calling us to meet specific needs. Purpose-oriented people have a curiosity and an overall interest in the world around them and a drive to make a difference. What needs are you drawn to as you look to the world today? How could you live out your calling in a way that would help meet those needs? At the point of intersection of all the circles in the Venn diagram, the place where your personality, skills, giftings, and background overlap with the world and the times that you live in, you'll find your opportunities. These are the things you could pursue on your path toward your purpose. There are likely a lot of good paths that could be taken, any one of which would lead to a good and fulfilling life. And even if your choices are limited, you can still make intentional decisions with the options available to you. This is a lot to throw at you, a lot to absorb and consider that takes much longer than 15 minutes, but what I hope you take away is knowing that God is writing a long story with your life. Your calling will unfold over time as you ask God to guide you to His purposes day by day. As you listen for God's direction and as you take action when you sense His leading, your calling will be revealed. So commit to acting, responding in obedience when God directs. If you are seeking the Spirit's guidance individually and in community, any action that keeps you moving forward will take you where God wants you to go. Let's walk in that path toward your purpose. Thank you.